Welcome to Corporate Scrutiny Committee meeting on Tuesday, the 10th of October. Item 1, apologies and changes in membership. I've received an apology from Councillor Drew. I've also got an apology from Councillor Ellis, and Councillor Churchman is substituting in her place. Any other apologies? And welcome to a new member of the committee, Councillor Redrup. Who unceremoniously has shoved Councillor Quigley off this committee to go and do other things. Item 2, minutes. Everyone's seen a copy of the minutes. They've been circulated. Do I have a proposer that they are a true record? Councillor Quirk. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Simon Cook. All those in favour? I will sign the minutes. Item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any? No. Item 4, public question time. I'm looking up and there is no one in the gallery and I don't have anything in front of me. So no public questions. Item 5, progress update, page 11. I didn't identify anything in particular. I think we'll just go through very quickly. We requested a copy of the review of leisure centres last time. I'm assuming there's no update. We were told we'd have an update in autumn. It's still the autumn. Yeah, by all means, Councillor James Evans.
Yeah, there will be some more information to share, probably, probably towards the end of November, hopefully. Yeah, it's all looking much more positive than it was a year ago anyway. So our numbers are up. And as you may or may not be seeing, Sue's had a replacement of equipment in the gym. So still keeping in the game, as it were, and attracting new members each month. So really pleased with our performance at One Leisure.
Thank you, Councillor Jones Evans. And is there any update while you're speaking on Kingston Marine Park heads of terms?
This came up at Scrutiny on Thursday, and I gave more of an update. Just to say, we're still working with the developers here, because it's a very, very important project, and for the whole island, not just for the Isle of Wight Council. And we'll better share things as promised as soon as we're able.
Thank you. There are 2 unrelated floating bridge issues. One is for the request to see the settlement, and another unrelated issue is this committee's request at the last meeting that the report setting out the findings and recommendations following the review of floating bridge, a request that it comes to scrutiny when available. I don't think Cabinet Member and Leader is here for those things. On the issue of the settlement agreement, I need to have a conversation with the leader actually outside this meeting to try and deal with that. He is coming, is he? He is coming. Committee requested corporate plan refresh when it's available. I assume it's not available, and that's why we haven't got it. Mr. Rowland.
Yeah, just on the review, it's still ongoing. It should be completed within the next month or so. So the independent review is still ongoing, and then once the report is ready, we will be sharing that with Scrutiny.
Thank you very much. And I think that is it. I think for the progress on actions.
Yeah, can I just
Councillor Love.
Can I just say I understand that the review of the floating bridge, the actions, is on track to be perhaps presented to the Cabinet in December. So we wouldn't be hearing anything about that this year, just as I'm not in the know of what's happening around that, but I have been told that it's expected around about December time is that floating report.
I think Mr. Rowland was referring to that when you spoke a moment ago. Is it? Yeah. Did you indicate a expected timeline or no? No. Mr. Rowland.
Yeah, just to point, the review's quite all encompassing in terms of it's looking at the economic aspects of the floating bridge. It's looking at the efficiency of it, and it's looking at the design itself in terms of its fit for purpose. So it's quite a lengthy piece of work. So we just want to make sure that we get that right before we actually bring it as a completed document.
Fine. No, understood. Understood. Thank you.
Chair, it's just one matter, if I could. On the outcomes, there's under members' questions, it records that I asked a question regarding what the supplementary planning document, which came before corporate scrutiny last meeting, does to make affordable housing affordable by residents on or below the average island wage. And there's a summary there that a full response has been provided and circulated to the committee. So the committee no doubt has seen and read that. And the short answer is that it doesn't do anything and can't do anything to make affordable housing affordable by residents on or below the average island wage.
Thank you. Item 6A and B, Council's forward plan and the committee's work programme. Is there anything on the forward plan that members would like to see on the work programme that's not already there? There's nothing I could identify on this paperwork. But there is a cyber strategy that's due to come forward. And next meeting would be the time that this committee could look at it. That would be the best timing, wouldn't it? So I'd be quite keen for this committee to look at that. The cabinet members happy and the committee's happy. I mean, cabinet members nodding. We haven't put that on our work plan, the cyber plan. I feel I should say welcome, leader, as it's particularly as your first corporate scrutiny in your new role. That's fine. That's fine.
When did you want that for your next meeting?
The next meeting, yeah.
When is that? Do you know?
Yeah, it'll be
A month, is it?
7th of November. Thank you. If there's nothing else, I mean, I think. Sorry, Councillor Spink.
On the committee's work programme, the disposal of property in East Cowes is to come before Cabinet, and it's on our committee's work programme for the meeting before Cabinet in November. Members might recall that I raised concerns at the last meeting of
Councillor Spink, I think it's been moved to January. I've just been told it's been moved to January.
Oh, has it?
Unfortunately, by the time the papers for corporate scrutiny are published, an updated forward plan comes out after that point. Right. So it has been moved to January, so it won't be on our committee's work plan in November.
And that's for the disposal in East Cowes.
Yeah.
Thank you. I might still, if I may, I was going to raise on that basis a broader concern that I raised last meeting, and that is that delegated decisions which rely on on commercial confidentiality have caused me a great deal of concern. And for East Cowes disposal of land to come before corporate scrutiny in a meaningful way, we would need to see at least some detail on the proposed disposal. And I would like to put forward a motion for this committee to consider, which is as follows. by way of preamble and background, I understand that there have been 40 delegated decisions in the last 12 months. Only 5, I understand, I may be wrong, but I'd like clarification on this, only 5 of which have been circulated to members. And the motion that I would like corporate scrutiny please to consider is this: 1, all delegated decisions taken in the last 12 months and all future decisions to be disclosed to all members. 2, that is members of the council. 2, where commercial confidentiality is raised, the matter should come before corporate scrutiny, which will hear the matter in camera with full disclosure being made to the committee. And 3, all delegated decisions that have a financial or resource impact to be brought before Cabinet in camera with all members of the council being permitted to attend. So I would ask, in the interest of being open and transparent, I'd ask corporate scrutiny please to support that motion and to make it as a recommendation to the Cabinet.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's proper. I don't know whether we've got any guidance on whether I can take a motion in that way. I mean, I certainly support the sentiment of what Councillor Spink has said, and I don't mind taking that up as an issue.
It doesn't have to be as a motion. We could, I think, simply recommend to Cabinet that those 3 issues are considered by Cabinet. So it becomes a corporate scrutiny recommendation.
I believe the monitoring officer is online, but if you're not, and his microphone has come off, so I think he's ready to speak. Chris Potter, is there anything you can say in terms of process here?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Robertson, and thank you, Councillor Spink. I think the matter would be best dealt with initially by having a conversation offline. I think it is quite clear from discussions and decisions previously in terms of corporate scrutiny, there's the clear desire to be able to access written records of decision. Written records of decision, unless they're exempt or confidential, are available to members and members of the public through the council's Modern Gov system. The issue in terms of access to information which is confidential or exempt, there are certain powers, as members are aware, for corporate scrutiny to view matters in camera, but only at the appropriate time. So I think one would have to look at the specific cases which would want to be looked at to see whether or not we've reached a point in time which members can actually see that information. I'm particularly mindful that where ongoing discussions in terms of contract terms have not yet been concluded, then by law, that point in time, there is no right even for members of scrutiny to see it. But there is a right, once that time goes by, for members in camera to get the relevant information to satisfy themselves as to what has gone on and so forth. So I think that there's a lot which obviously would benefit from a discussion, but on the point about a motion, there's been no notice given in terms of on the papers for a motion, and I think the best way forward is, as suggested, a conversation to reassure members as to what the procedure exists, where access can be already gained for information, and if access cannot be gained, then obviously the reasons why particular information, and particularly on matters which are obviously of concern in terms of confidentiality or exempt elements, to actually press for reasons as to why something remains confidential or exempt at a point in time, and if it is, when it might be available for members of scrutiny to look at it in order to perform their statutory duties. Thank you, Chairman.
I may, Chair, just is simply that obviously I take the monitoring officer's advice, but it's simply that there does seem to be a great amount, if I may say so, of secrecy surrounding this whole issue of delegated decisions. For example, I understand that the audit committee has asked this question several times. What is the financial limit on delegated decisions? How many delegated decisions in the last 12 months have exceeded that limit? Audit committee has not received any answers. I've raised this confidentiality issue numerous times, and I'm loath to some extent to kick it into the long grass yet again with informal discussions. The disposal of council assets is an extremely serious issue. And we don't seem to have any proper procedure, it seems to me. No one knows, I don't know, does anyone in this room know, who takes the decision that the matter is confidential?
So Councillor Smith, I'm very happy to take away with you as chair of this committee, if the committee's happy, those issues, those concerns, have the conversation with Chris Bottom, with the chief executive and others, try and resolve some of the specific questions. I think on the issue of confidentiality in decision making, it's a concern I've had. It was a concern I think I expressed over Kingston Marine Park, and I've already had a conversation with the chief executive about that, and she is going away to work on a paper or a proposal to clarify and deal with how we scrutinise work where there's commercial sensitivity, and make sure that things aren't accidentally marked as sensitive when they're not. On the specific issue of disposal of land in East Cowes in January, then as the chair, I will, as part of the agenda setting process, make it very clear that we want to see everything we're entitled to see. And if that means we've got to have a meeting not in public to do it, then so be it. I've got a couple of hands. Councillor Love.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, obviously I'm the ward member there, and before that is disposed, I want to know what exactly is being disposed and what has been offered and what the discussions are from that. So I know that it's gone out for expressions of intent, etc. But that's in my, sorry, but the point that you make is actually a good point, is that in looking at what's before us here, it says that the consultees are East Cowes Waterfront Implementation Group and local member. There's nothing there about town council. This is in our ward. It affects the people and community of our ward. We want to know how that is being disposed of, and we should be given the right to disagree with that delegated decision. So, know that we were receiving some information previously from Chris Ashman. There doesn't seem to be anything in place to update us about what is happening from that point onwards. So there is a gap that needs to be looked at. So I agree with you around that. But before somebody makes a decision on that, I'm expecting somebody to come and speak to me about what it is that they're making a decision on and what's going to be built there, or potentially built there. I'm not just going to accept an individual's decision when there's been no discussion with me about it. And that is, although that's relative to me, that is absolutely relative to every other parcel of land. Every parcel of land that's released from this council should be discussed with, one, the town councils and the parish councils, so that the community knows what's happening, and the ward member, and then any other groups as is appropriate.
Thank you, Councillor Love. Thank you. I agree. Councillor Churchman.
I just don't understand the total lack of transparency about any of this. The island taxpayers fund everything that happens with extra bits from the government. How can things be hidden from the people who are contributing all the money? I find it incredible that there should be confidentiality agreements. I sit on pensions committee. When you read the Times in the morning, so-and-so bid X for so-and-so. because the shareholders own it and therefore the shareholders want to know what's going on. Well, as far as I'm concerned, the 142,000 people on this island are the shareholders, and they should have access, certainly should have transparency in the forefront. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Jordan.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe I can help. Don't want to intervene in valuable work your committee's doing, Chair. My understanding is delegate decisions are published. In fact, I'm just looking at 3 that have been published this afternoon, just recently. That's my understanding, that delegated decisions are published. Now, that doesn't deal with confidentiality, and that's why I'm making this point, that maybe confidentiality is an entirely different matter to delegated decisions. So I just make a distinction there. And finally, I couldn't let this go, could I, Councillor Churchman, in saying that you were in a council administration that hid from this, the rate powers that you were talking about, the confidential decision on the PFI. I was hoping we could get past all of the political game playing. I hope the future is brighter, but you were part of an administration that did that.
Leader, you don't know that it wasn't a confession that was being made. I don't recall Councillor Churchman time limiting her
Could
criticism.
I just say, Chair?
Without taking this too far, Councillor Churchman, last comment, and then we'll move on.
Very quickly, I actually belonged to the independent group at the time, and I was chair of Scrutiny, and I was grilled by government literally before that contract was signed.
Well, if everyone's happy, we'll take it away as I proposed to Councillor Spink. If the committee's happy with that, and there are several issues in here, we'll unwind them and come back with a suggestion to this committee. Yeah. Councillor Love.
Yeah, Chair, as long as as long as we meet again before the delegated decisions are made, we don't want the delegated decision, because, you know, I'm expecting to be completely briefed about what is and what isn't going to happen with that, as with everybody else. And I think that that's right and transparent. So there is a question about how we make delegated decisions. I think that's a reasonable question to ask. But I think, you know, particularly as we're facing some significant delegated decisions for land disposal, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the kind of delegated decisions that are happening today, because I wouldn't expect that, to be fair. But for specific things like this, where it has a significant impact on community and people, I would expect perhaps there not to be a delegated decision, but a more formalised decision. But that's something that needs to be hammered out, I think. So yeah, thank you, Chair. My point is that this was, when's our next meeting? Sorry, without
7th of November.
7th of November. So it would come again in January, which would be. So would the delegated decision be in January?
Councillor Love, I think on the disposal of land at East Cowes, the decision looks like it's going to come for Cabinet in January, so this committee in January, and I will do all I can in the chair to make sure that's as transparent as possible.
Yeah, to see.
But I think you as a ward member might feel you want to be more proactive or have the conversations before then, because you may feel no matter how transparent it is in January, that's very late in the day for you to have a particular contribution. So I can't do much more than make sure that the process at this meeting in January is transparent.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that. My point is that if we are being transparent, there are timescales on which councils operate, and I would want that to come to be discussed at an East Cowes Town Council, if for nothing else other for information. But I don't see that, because we have discussed it we've known that there's been some discussions, but we don't know what's happening now as a result of the I'll find the word now. It's gone out to not the tenders, the expressions of interest, sorry. So I want to know what's happened from the expressions of interest, so that we can make an informed community East Cowes decision about that. Thank you.
Perhaps someone could communicate with Councillor Love after this meeting. Yeah, fine. I'm going to move us on, but thank you very much. Item 7, call in a Browns golf course lease decision to consider the delegated decision taken on the 1st of September. Now, I'm just going to make sure that we go through this in a proper order because it is a formal call-in procedure. So the item was called in by a list of councillors, including me and the chair, and you've seen those names who called it in. All this committee can do is make a recommendation. It can't make a decision, and it can't substitute a decision of the cabinet or cabinet member. So I'm going to invite Councillor Quirk to present the reasons for the call-in and give an indication of what his desired outcome is. Any other members who signed it can speak, and then we'll take some advice from the monitoring officer. So, Councillor Quirk.
I prepared a statement.
Sorry, Councillor Quirk, could you also just give some background to the decision as well, seeing as I haven't done that, to tell us what the decision is and what it relates to?
The background to the decision is that the Browns Golf is in an area of Yaverland that is very much a tourist-driven area. It's between the zoo, or the Wild Heart Sanctuary, as it now calls itself, and Dinosaur Isle, and just up from the play areas of Stanton Gardens. So it's a very touristy type area.
And sorry, and what I should have said is the decision that was taken on the 1st of September was to grant a 5-year lease, albeit with a break clause on the Brown site.
So the Brown site has failed a couple of times, but it is a key development site identified in the draft Bay plan that is currently going through the system. So it's a large site. The Browns golf course only occupies about half of the site that's available, but it blocks access to the rest of the site if you keep it there. So there are a number of proposals in the Bay plan that well, I'll read my thing because I think it explains it. Much of the tourist infrastructure of the Bay is actually located at Yaverland, Dinosaur Isle, Wild Heart Sanctuary, Stanton Gardens and Browns. And that the site features as a major regeneration opportunity in the Bay plan, which is funded jointly by Isle of Wight Council, but a big chunk of funding from the 3 local councils, Shanklin, Lake and Sandown. The plan should identify the criteria against which opportunities can be ranked and what criteria are used to whether the current proposals are best for the general regeneration of the Bay. The considerations of that group have not been taken into account. What was originally treated as a minor decision when the Greater Yaverland site is clearly a major element of the total Bay infrastructure.
Bring your microphone a bit closer, or maybe you're covering it with your paper. Speak a bit louder. Yeah, thank you.
The originally invited tender involved a much smaller land footprint, and that continued, and that contained in the final draft lease. Some of the original expressions of interest indicated that it was the original proposal included insufficient land to be viable, and that's why they withdrew. When the larger site was considered, why were those who originally showed an interest not invited to bid on the project based on a much larger land allocation? How much is the agreed rent and contribution to the site? And related to that, how much has already been spent refurbishing the site? Was this project included in this year's budget? How much more do the council expect to spend over the next 5 years? Are we getting value for money? So do the cabinet regard this project as meeting its value for money obligations? If the council just wanted the site open for business at the earliest opportunity, why did it not just issue a license to occupy, delay a full lease until the Bay plan was completed? And the recommendation to the cabinet is that the decision to grant the lease is deferred until the Bay plan is completed and approved, and any decision on granting the lease be measured against the Bay plan. In the meantime, allow the facility to be operated under a license to occupy.
Okay, thank you. We'll come to that recommendation in a minute and open it up for discussion by this committee. And I'm sure Councillor Quirk will clarify any of those points if we're unclear. There is an opportunity formally for any other members signing the call-in to speak. I think I might be the only other person, so I'm happy to do that at the committee discussion stage, in which case the next two stages are advice from the monitoring officer, followed by any statement from the relevant cabinet member. So if Mr. Potter is online and can hear us, can you give us any advice? And I've also got a statement here from the Chief Financial Officer, but over to you, Mr. Potter.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. The decision effectively has been made to grant a lease for 5 years, subject to a break clause, as you've kindly outlined. One of the concerns, I think, behind the call-in request was whether or not such a break clause would enable the council to obtain occupation of the site at an appropriate time in order to facilitate its medium to long-term aims regarding the Bay Area. Subsequent to the request for call-in, discussions have taken place with the client department to seek reassurance as to the terms of the break clause, that the council can, on its own volition, decide to exercise the break clause at any time it wishes, subject to a 6-month delay in terms of implementation. My understanding of the present situation is that there is no formal written lease concluded, but in terms of the provision of services to members of the public, which was referred to, I think, by Councillor Spink earlier, there is occupation already of the particular premises, and my understanding is that it's on the basis of a tenancy at will at the current time. So, as you quite rightly outlined, the Corporate Scrutiny Committee cannot overrule the decision, but obviously they can make recommendations if they so wish regarding the decision which has been made, the 1st of September decision, I think you rightly referred to. And part of it might be, and it's not for me to put words in your mouths, of course, might be that sort of clarification is given, in terms of the break clause, that it is flexible, it can be exercised by the council, and there's a 6-month period within which, at the earliest, to gain repossession of the particular premises. I think that summarises it effectively. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. And I'm just going to read a statement from Chris Ward, the Chief Financial Officer, which says, the decision to award a 5-year lease for Brown's Golf Course, putting putting and clubhouse, as described in the delegated decision report, is within the council's budget and policy framework. The financial implications of the decisions are set out in paragraphs 18 and 19 of that report, with the necessary capital investment being funded from within the approved capital programme items 98 and 102, amounting to 32,000, 20,000 respectively, and the remainder of 13,000 from the council's repairs and renewals reserve. All of these budgeted sums fall within the council's approved budget for 23-24. Would the relevant cabinet member like to respond? Councillor Jones Evans.
Well, while you're on the element about members who signed the call in, I've actually got a statement from one of the members who signed the call in. Will I be able to read it out? Would that be okay?
Yes, please
I was
do.
still on that section. Is that
Yes,
okay?
yes.
Thank you. I did actually ring you yesterday to try and we did ring you yesterday to try and work out, what we're going to do today and hear your concerns, so I could be completely prepared for this. Anyway, so this is from Councillor Richard Quigley. I have withdrawn my support for the call-in based on the information supplied, that's supplied by the council. I am happy with the deal as it provides the council with income, protects a site of community importance, and should allow the leaseholder to create a successful business. In addition, as I'm no longer a member of corporate scrutiny, so cannot have a vote, I think it's only fair that I withdraw my support for the call-in. You can read this out in the meeting, Richard. Thank you.
Fine, thank you. So that's a contribution from Councillor Quigley. Do we have a contribution from you, Councillor Jones-Evans?
Yes, well, it's not, I could talk a lot about place planning, because this seems to be at the heart of it. The place plan for the Bay area was very successful in its consultation period this July, with many people contributing. And we are, I think, the draft has just landed. It hasn't, no one's had a chance to review it yet. I've not seen it, obviously. It's a very operational matter at the moment. So, you know, we don't know what the place plan is, the draft place plan is saying. But what I do know from having been through place plans in Newport and also Ryde, and in very early stages at Cowes and Northwood, these are transformative documents and plans that are owned by the community and that reflect those individual communities. They're absolutely vital because, as we know, the Isle of Wight, each town is actually very different and has its own own character really, and own way of expressing itself and own needs. So that's why place planning on this sort of very granular level is absolutely key. So having been through Newport's place plan and also on the periphery for Ryde as well, I mean, look what's happened to Ryde. I mean, I'm you know, Ryde through its place plan, Newport, we were the first and third best applicants for has money back in 2019. That brought in 1.5 million to Newport, and I think it was roughly 1.2 to Ryde. Ryde has also since then had more money come through DFT, Arts Council England. So when you get a place plan, it starts to really move things, and because you demonstrate during the process about partnership working, because if you know what your place is about, you know who wants to work and make a place better, then it just gives confidence to these really important funders that you know what you're about. So it's very critical. So having, and you know, what can we say about Ryde? You know, fantastic news. So you were there, Councillor Robertson, at the conference I saw. It was a £20 million. This wouldn't have happened without a place plan in Ryde, without those partnerships there. So place planning is absolutely critical, part of our regeneration strategy at the Isle of Wight Council. It has been since 2019. Okay, so nothing new. This is just a continuum here. So why I was not going to make a decision on this site for Browns, the lease of the golf course and the associated buildings, that would put in jeopardy anything that was going to happen at the place plan. Now, many of us were at the Avalon meeting at the Shrewville Hotel. I think the last we had was May time, and you saw all the enthusiasm in the room. You were there, Councillor Quirk was there, loads of other people in the room. All the enthusiasm, all the different ideas that are coming forward right on that area, right on this pivotal part of Sandown. So it's critical that a decision that I was going to make on a commercial decision for an operator for Browns wasn't going to impact anything that was going to come forward. Why would I do that? That is just not common sense at all, is it? You're not going to scupper your own long-term projects, are you, at all? So that is why we came to the decision of doing a 6-month break clause, because that gives either side plenty of time then to understand where they stand, and then, you know, how to withdraw, vacate, whatever. But also, we also know that these things take a long time to come to fruition. Even if I had the place plan in front of me today with an action plan, do this, how long is that going to take to deliver? These things take a long time to draw the funding in, to draw the partners in. You know, it's not going to happen overnight. You might need to get the planning, all of that. So nothing is going to happen overnight. But meanwhile, we've got a very valuable, well-loved asset of Browns, the golf course, which, you know, every time we drive down Culver Parade, it just brings a smile to your face when you see there people playing golf. You see the beautiful blue tiles of the clubhouse. It's designed by Henry Cotton. It's an iconic part of Sandown. This is actually very, very critical to I think the character of Sandown itself and its history. It is a historic place. I think we've got the 100 years of history there. I mean, I would like to bring, if it allows, bring the local member, because she has, I think, hasn't had a voice in this, not really, and certainly wasn't asked to part the call in. And you are the local member, so I don't know if you might have heard enough from me already, Councillor Robertson. You're looking a bit bored.
I wouldn't word it in that way, Councillor Jones-Evans, but I will take up your offer to invite Councillor Andre to speak.
Thank you, that's very kind.
Thank you very much. What I will say is, though, I don't want to get into a conversation about how important Bay Place plans are or the value of Brown's golf course. I don't think that's why we're here. But I will invite Councillor Andre to speak very briefly, if I may, on the call in itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as the ward member, I have to say I am very disappointed and rather confused, to be honest, why this call-in has been brought. Councillor Quirk mentioned just a couple of things, with your indulgence, that I'd like to address. That yes, we are building up a strong tourist offer along Culver Parade into Yaverland, but I can't stress enough how much a part of that tourist offer Brown's is. In September 2020, a petition was put forward, and I will just read the name. I won't read the petition, I'll just read. It was a petition to persuade the Isle of Wight Council to acknowledge the unique heritage of Browns and to guarantee the protection of this much loved public asset with all it has to offer for future generations. 4,090 people signed that petition in support. And that's exactly what we, why would you fly in the face of a very clear buy-in from the local community to such a valued asset, which can run alongside the Bay Place Plan? The Bay Place Plan is all about working with the local community, but we already know how they feel about Browns. And the final thing I'd like to pick up on, which does rather concern me, Councillor Quirk mentioned the word development. Now, I sincerely hope that he means regeneration rather than development, because a lot of that land, as we know, is floodplain. And I wouldn't want to think that one of the purposes of this call-in was to effectively free up that area for development. So I would like some clarification on that, please.
Thank you, Councillor Andre. I want to ensure that this conversation doesn't get too wide. It's not about what should be done with the land in and around Browns at Yaverland. Certainly in my role at calling this in, it was about the process and about some very important questions. It's not about the land use or its future. And as we now move into committee discussion on this, I'm happy to clarify two issues I have.
Sorry, Chair. On item 4, did it actually say it's item 5, supported by the appropriate officer? Are you going to let Mr. Rowland to
appropriate officer?
And also, I was handed when I came in a list of questions here. How are you wanting me to respond to them and when? I'm happy to respond to them verbally during this agenda item, but please just let me know.
So what I'd like to do is continue to go through this process and would the appropriate officer like to make comment?
Thanks, Councillor Robertson. I'm just trying to understand when you say process, because I'd like to give a bit of context in terms of why the decision was taken, why the recommendation from officers was given to cabinet member, and the cabinet member made the decision. The previous tenants of Browns gave the keys back to us earlier this year because they couldn't make it a viable business, demonstrated they couldn't afford to keep the maintenance coming. There were quite a significant amount of repairs on the whole building, so they made a decision that they no longer saw it as a viable business. One of the other reasons for that was that we limited the time of the previous lease because we were considering what the future of the whole site would be. And because of the upcoming place plan and the other reason is because of that difference of opinion in the area about what the long-term use and the long-term aspirations are for the site. So that limited that previous leaseholder from actually developing the business and developing it into a successful operation. We were then faced with an empty building with a significant amount of repairs, most of which we could not justify as a council to spend until we knew what the future of that site was going to be. So again, coming back to place plan, coming back to the ambitions for that site, is the ambition to refurbish the Browns building completely and offer it as a business or an opportunity? Or is the plan or the aspirations to actually remove that building and develop something else? We don't know yet. And what the place plan is meant to do is to actually help shape those decisions. So we came to a pragmatic decision to produce a 5-year let with a 6-month break clause to actually open up to keep the front of the site remaining open, to give the impression to people within the area that it was still open, it was still active in terms of the pitch and putt course and in terms of the sort of the limited retail offer that's been offered by this new tenant. This new tenant's quite confident that they can make it a going concern, and they're also quite they're also aware about the 6 months break clause. So effectively, we met as a council. The recommendation we made to the cabinet member on the decision was a pragmatic decision to keep the frontage open, pending the further decisions on what would happen on that site in the future.
Thank you. If we open it up to the committee, I'm happy to start with my 2 particular concerns. One of which is the financial outlay in order to make it tenantable, as balanced against the monthly rent. So somewhere in the region of 65,000 to be spent on it in order to have a rental income of £1,000 a month while it's operational is a concern just on those figures, that even if it were to run 5 years, you may not get the money back on the money that was spent to make it tenantable in the first place. Of course, if it doesn't run for 5 years, then it was an expenditure of 65,000 to recover very little from the lease. So it's potentially a loss-making decision. I appreciate the pragmatic nature of the decision, but I think that in itself is worthy of scrutiny. Also on the process, I'll bring you back, Councillor Jones-Evans, in a minute. On process, it does seem that the original tender included a reduced amount of land or less land that was eventually awarded to the current tenant. And I will make it clear, this is not an attack on Browns as a business or on the tenant, certainly not from me, but it is, I think, legitimate scrutiny of a process that I think could have been done better. Councillor Jones-Evans.
It was just that in general about maintenance of our buildings. As a council, we have a responsibility to maintain all of our buildings because our public assets, and not all of them bring in income in. So I think you need to sort of step back a little bit and not just see this as this very one decision regarding this. And then you also would have expected there to be, maintenance and investment over a long period of time, where we've kind of done it at once. So I think it's probably trying to find the right word here. It's probably not helpful just to see it just through that one lens. It's multifaceted, and we do have a responsibility. For instance, we've just spent about £400,000 at the library. Now we're not getting that income back from the library, are we? But it's a valuable asset and valuable building to the whole island, and we have a responsibility as property owners to maintain our buildings.
Yes, I said that, Councillor Jones-Evans, but this is intended to be a business, a property that accommodates a business, and that £1,000 a month while it's open. So I assume if it closes for the winter, there will be no rent at all. Perhaps is an indication of how difficult it is to run a business out of that building and on that site. Is there any other contributions, Councillor Love?
Answer the other questions. Sorry, I've got a list of questions here.
No, I don't think the process is a schedule of questions and answers.
Can you explain why I've been given a list of questions? You've asked two of them.
I think this
Confused
was.
about why I've got these questions.
If I may, Councillor Jones Evans, I think this is aid for Councillor Quirk to speak. He's spoken, he's said those things, and you've had an opportunity to respond, which I'm grateful for. This is not a public document. Councillor Love.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think it's for me to comment about something that really is for the people of Sandown to decide around what their vision is of the future. I think there's a couple of important things here, though, for me to comment on about the process. One is that what's key for me is that there's a break clause there, and that break clause allows the development of the Bay Plan once it's being developed to be implemented. I think that's a really important thing. So for me, that allows the flexibility to be able to bring forward other suggestions and other ideas in the future. I do agree with you about the time. It's taken 4 years to get from East Cowes, from the waterfront plan, to anything like near, any kind of implementation, and that's not even there yet. So that's important. I think the really important thing is just I'm picking up on the questions that you've raised around the finances of it. I think the point is Sandown needs all the help that it can. And the point being is that this isn't just about 65k and 1k in terms of profit. It's about if you allow a site to become derelict in a town which already has some derelict buildings which are in prime positions, you actually you disempower the investment that comes forward, because people will then say, if the council can't look after its own properties and it can't look after its own assets, then why should we invest there? And I think it's really important. So it's 65k in my view. I wouldn't have commented on this, but apart from the fact that you've raised it, but I think 65k, keeping that area looking better than it would be if it was just allowed to become derelict or pulled down. That area isn't in good condition. We don't want 5 years or 2 years or even 1 year of it looking poor. So from my perspective, you will bring in additional investment if the area looks good and has some amenities, whether if it's used or not, irrespective of whether if I'm a fit and putch person or whatever. I think the point is that we need to keep Sandown's assets looking as good as it can. And it is sandwiched between a hotel that's had virtually no investment for many, many years, and at the other end, several buildings that have been burnt down and in poor condition. So for me, it's an opportunity to bring in investment. The break clause, from my point of view, is absolutely vital. And that reassures me as a councillor that you can do whatever you want to do in the future. Yes, it's cost 65,000 and there is an income, but a small income. So I accept that there's a difficulty there. But that is against what damage might be done to that town and community if we do nothing. And so I don't know who's taken on Brown's, but you're a brave person, and I hope that you make some money from it. And I think what we need to be focusing is on the future from the conversation that you brought up in terms of what might come forward for that. And so I actually support what the officers have recommended in this case. That would be my vision from it. As long as we've got that break clause there, I think there's hope. What we now need to do is focus on getting that Bay Plan completed and putting something into action. That's how I kind of feel about it. So I am slightly bemused about why it came forward as, but members are obviously concerned about that, so I understand that. But I can't see anything in here which doesn't allow a development moving forward. That would be unless I'm missing something. If you're telling me there's something there specifically that doesn't allow a plan to be, then I understand that. Then.
Okay, so, well, from my understanding, it's like rock on a hard place because there's a further 100,000 or so identified that needs to be spent on that building in the coming years. So the 65,000 is just to make it tenantable. Now, ordinarily under a 5-year lease, fully repairing lease, your business, the business that moves in, would be responsible for those repairs. Of course, on the flip side, the problem with a break clause is that no business owner is going to want to invest money when they could be given notice within 6 months. So I think it's a wholly unsatisfactory position to be in. But I do take the point that it was only ever intended to be a stopgap, and that hopefully the Bay plan will give us an opportunity for a slightly more long-term vision. I'm going to bring in Councillor Churchman.
Yes, I'm a little concerned about due process, item 3, when it says smaller land footprint. I'd like to know how many people tendered originally for the site. Then, when the larger site was considered, why weren't those original tenders given the chance to re-tender? And well, that's it basically. And how many people actually tendered when the site size, etc., was altered? Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Jones-Evans.
Thank you. I believe it's in the report, but specifically there were 24 expressions of interest when the first EOI went out with the initial footprint. There were 8, I understand, returned, and then I think because actually there was a hiatus because of the Councillor Bacon had this portfolio at that particular time, and I picked it up afterwards. So what happened was the 8 people that put the EOIs in were then contacted again with the larger footprint, and then I believe there were 4 that came back from that. So I don't know what the decision was about why all 24 weren't contacted. There might be different reasons for that. I don't have that detail. Maybe Mr. Rowland does. But all I know is the people that did actually put in proper tenders, expressions of interest, 8, and they were all contacted again to rebid.
Councillor Cook.
Thank you. So one of the many benefits of joining iWalk is that your local council is represented at meetings such as these. Unfortunately, only one of the 3 Bay councils is a member, and I have received no representation from that council, Sandown. So I can only go on the information before me. I do note that it says that most local councils in the Bay Area would agree with this calling or have expressed concerns. So my first question would be, has there been any resolution by any of the councils to back that up? Also, I totally agree with Councillor Love. I don't really understand how this would impede a place plan and feel that the break clause would be sufficient protection against any work or development that would need to happen. And finally, I would take up the chair's comment about the rent of £1,000 a month. As I understand it, looking at the document, that £1,000 a month is only for the first year, and then it says 2024 to 27, 8,000 plus 20% of net profits. Unfortunately, it's a bit ambiguous. It doesn't say if that's £8,000 a month, a year, a day, or whatever. So some clarity around that would be helpful as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I took it to be for a year. I don't know whether there's any clarity to be given in the room, but if not, we can leave that as an open question.
We'll come back on the clarity on the monthly cost. Can I just come back on that point that you made, Councillor, in terms of the cost of repairs? The 65,000 was the minimum amount we could expend on that building in order to facilitate that tenant coming in. So there's a significant amount of additional funding that would be required, and it's mainly at the rear of the building, because you're probably aware there's a glass roof and there's a lot of issues at the rear of the building. We made a decision, as part of that pragmatic decision, to not spend money on developing that part of the site, knowing that we needed to just concentrate on the front of it, because again, it was about that frontal image, and it was about that ability to say that there was an operation going on there. It wasn't what it was in the past. It wasn't anywhere near the ambition that people would like to see if they were going to see Brown's operational again, whether it be a golf course or whether it be a food and drink facility. But we made a pragmatic decision to open as much as we could with a limited amount of funding, because we were aware of that value versus community value. And that's the balance that we've made when we made that recommendation to the portfolio holder.
The clubhouse is the front pit we're talking about. The rear elevation is a lean-to, as it were. So it's actually not integral with the actual historic clubhouse, and that part wasn't necessary for the running of the golf. So that's as Mr. Owens just explained, that's why we made that decision. Because we have to be very careful with public funds and really look at the integrity of that building. If the local community decide they want to do something else at the back of that building, then what's the sense in investing £100,000 in repairing something which is maybe not wanted or is reached its useful life? That's the question I asked myself.
Can I make a point of order? I'm not sure it's a point of order, so you can tell me off if you like. I want to know what the outcome is. So I'd like to know what you're actually trying to get as an outcome from this meeting.
So councillor, I think
we're talking lots about it, but I don't understand what it is that we're trying to get. So
councillor Quirk made at the beginning said what the recommendation he wanted, and I'm going to invite him to restate that. If there's any more contributions from the committee, I'll take them now. If not, I'll invite councillor Quirk to sum up, make his recommendation, and then we can have a vote on it. So are there any more contributions? Councillor Lever.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think I'd appreciate some more input from Councillor Quirk, because I'm struggling with this one. It's not that I don't appreciate some of the questions that were listed. I think they're probably important questions to ask. I'm not sure it necessarily warranted a call in for it though. But the recommendation to me doesn't really fit with what's being asked in the questions, because all the recommendations asking is that the grant of lease is deferred until the bay plan is completed. But I think we're kind of getting to the grips with with the break clause in there. I'm not sure we'd necessarily need to wait for that. I'm not sure that's necessary. And can I just double check? Is there a tenant agreed for Browns now? Yes.
It's nodding and one shaking their head.
yes, they're in.
Sorry, yes, there is, yes, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I thought it's a plan. I thought thinking about the place plan. We haven't the place plan yet, but
No, that's. I'm not sure what, as Councillor Love was stating, I'm not sure what we're trying to get out of this then. And I feel a little bit uncomfortable us talking about the benefit of a break clause when there's a tenant there, and yeah.
I mean, it's been made public, but I take your point. Yeah. Councillor Redrup.
Hi, sorry, I just wanted to clarify, when would the tenancy start, as in the tenancy agreement start? So when would the 6 months be up? And for the break clause, will both parties have to agree to a break clause, or is it either one? Either one? Okay, thank you.
the tenant took occupation in early July, was it? Early July, sorry? 29th July, very good. It was very important that we tried to get open for the summer season, for the school holidays, to make impacts. It was starting to look like a cow field at the front there, so it was very important. It looked like it was an attraction, as Councillor Love very eloquently put, how important that is, that to look good and to be used and valued as it is. So yeah, they've been in and they're just a tenancy at will at the moment until because I signed this agreement on the 1st of September. It's been called in. So I've been listening very intently, and I guess I'm ultimately curious about, because in my mind, I'm completely aligned with the place plan. That is part of my job to do, and it's part of our strategy, which was from 2019, and again in the corporate plan that we all agreed. So I'm just doing the job that I've been tasked to do. But we have to, have to be, I've always been saying, be more like a business, be more commercial. So we have to, no business is going to invest in its site without some form of assurance. And even a 6-month break clause, it gives you enough time, but I mean, does it give you enough time over 5 years to invest as you need to? But I think during that 5 years time, become very, very clear what the future is as the place plan unfolds, so that they'll have more certainty about direction of travel. We'll have more certainty as well. So for me, I think this lease gives the best of both worlds within the constraints we're in.
Councillor Redrop, Councillor Lever, and then I'm probably going to invite Councillor Quirk to sum up and make his proposal. So Councillor Redrop.
Sorry, I'm not sure if I was clear. I wanted to know when it would start and when the 6 months would end, just so I get an idea of timeline.
So it's a 5-year lease, so that nothing's been enacted yet. So say in 2 years' time, we're clear what we're doing, we're going, actually, this isn't going to be here, a golf course anymore, then we would enact at that point 6 months. So it's just. So
I mean, I'm probably answering the question. It hasn't started yet, although there's a
Yeah.
tendency it will, and it could be notice could be given at any time, which would trigger 6 months.
Get you. Sorry, I misunderstood. Thank you.
Councillor Lever.
Thank you, Chair. Just something Councillor Cook mentioned before that I'm just interested to know, and I appreciate there's a number of Isle of Wight Bay councillors on the request in the calling, but Councillor Cook said he, as the Isle of Wight rep, didn't receive any correspondence from Sandown Council. I'm just interested if any of the Bay parish or town councils raised any concern about this themselves.
Councillor Jones-Evans and Councillor Andre, both
Yeah.
very briefly, if you may, and then I will bring this to a
just to say,
close.
the mayor of Sandown has been in to talk to me about this, and it is supportive of the position that I took.
And certainly I sit on Sandown Town Council and no objections to this plan, to this lease. It's been welcomed by Sandown Town Council. Thank you.
Wasn't one of the signatories to this also on Sandown Town Council, Councillor Ward? He's on Sandown Town Council and he signed this calling.
He didn't, yes, he is on the calling, but he didn't raise any objection.
I think we have to be careful about members speaking on behalf of whole town or parish councils. Councillor Quirk, can you sum up and make your recommendation and we'll have a vote?
The site is integral to the Bay Plan. I actually attended all of the sessions, not just the first session and the last session. I went to every single session, and what happens with grounds was a key element. The Dinosaur Isle want to expand, go backwards, supported by the Natural History Museum. Wild Heart Trust wants to expand, going backwards. There's a proposal for putting a beach football, year-round beach football that isn't affected by the tides. That's a national competition type quality beach football site there. There are lots of things, and there are one or two people around who would like to see something like Dinosauria, but that's probably not the best site for that. But there's a Bay Plan, and the process for going through that involves a lot of people from the Bay. And actually nobody, other than a fleeting comment from Heather Humby about nostalgia, wanted Browns to stay as Browns, because they all accepted that it's in the meetings that were there, the people who were there. Now they want to keep that site as a tourist site, but not necessarily, because people, but the last people couldn't make a go of it. The people before that couldn't any longer make a go of it. So it's what do you want to do? You can keep the site. You could have kept the site open right from the start by just giving someone a license to occupy. They understand that you can pull the rug on them at any stage, but you still give them 6 months' notice. I don't have a problem with the 6 months' notice. I think there's a real problem with the process that this has gone through. It was seen as a minor application, a minor decision. It isn't. It affects the whole Bay, and that should have been a major decision. There should have been consultation with the Bay Town Councils in advance about because it's important to the whole of the Bay, and I think this has been handled the wrong way round. You should have actually looked at the Bay, and when you change the rules, some of the people who responded the first time round says it's not viable the size that it is. And one of them has approached me specifically to complain about why was this given. He didn't get a second crack because he turned it down at the first hurdle because you couldn't make a go of it as the site. But he never heard again, and then suddenly it was awarded to someone else. I think that there are some issues about the process here that need to be, we need to learn some lessons. And I just don't think it's fair putting someone in there with the promise of 5 years, with the expectation of 5 years.
Councillor Quirk, could I ask, perhaps you'd like to make your
So
recommendation?
my recommendation, the decision to grant a lease is deferred until the Bay Plan is completed and approved. And any decision on granting a lease be measured against the Bay Plan. In the meantime, allow the facility to operate under a license to occupy.
So I'm going to take a vote on that. I will second it. I'm happy to second it. All those in favour of that recommendation to Cabinet? All those against? And any abstentions? No. So that falls. So that recommendation won't go through. Thank you very much. I think that was, for what it's worth, a helpful process, calling process and scrutiny. And I actually value the discussion and comment all round. So thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Item number 8, pre-decision scrutiny to the draft island planning strategy. I understand this has been delayed in terms of coming to full council until the new year. So I don't propose to deal with this other than perhaps a quick update from Councillor Fuller on timeline rather than the substance of it.
Yes, we've decided to delay the full council decision on the island planning strategy. As members will be aware, and I certainly Councillor Jarman will be aware and Councillor Spink will be aware, we are hoping that the Levelling Up Act will get royal assent on the 7th of November, which is I think 2 days before full council. Now we're hoping that there will be an NPPF that will connect with the Levelling Up Act, which will have some of the good stuff that we all have heard that could be coming forward from government. Now, I think it would be very premature to be looking at this during November with all these other things on the horizon. So what we want to do is we want to delay it by another couple of months, engage with the other political groups, find out really from them whether there is anything else we want to add within the plan, and hopefully take it from there. But I am calling upon group leaders, and we'll be talking to group leaders about the IPS to see if we can make it any better than it currently is. So that is just really an update on where we are with the IPS. You know, I've been hearing it from quite a lot of members, and last week at Regeneration and Neighbourhoods Committee, there was a couple of people saying, let's get on to do it, but I don't think we should do it prematurely. I think we have to make a decision that is well founded and has basis for us to move forward on it. And I think that will offer us the opportunity to do that. I've also been nagged by the MP as well, because he's also saying to me he wants to see the IPS approved, because the island needs certainty, and the IPS will at least give it some certainty for future development while we are looking at what's going to come forward, you know, particularly with respect to exceptional circumstances. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. And I should just add that this issue, the IPS, primarily will come before neighbourhoods and regen scrutiny, as it comes under their area of competence. I'm told that although they don't have a meeting before, I don't think they have one until January, and it would be a bit late by then, they intend to have a extra meeting in December, and members of this committee will be invited. We can go anyway, we're members of the council, but I would encourage the committee members here to go along to that regeneration scrutiny, where we can make a contribution, and that may be the best way of dealing with the double scrutiny, as it were. I might nevertheless suggest we keep it on the agenda for January to note, but let's see how the December joint scrutiny, for want of a better word, meeting goes. Thank you. Councillor Fuller. Item 9, scams and fraud prevention, pages 53 to 66. So this is a report that follows on from discussion at this committee in May. I've had a read. I certainly think it reads very well. It's very helpful. I have a couple of minor reflections to make, but I will open it up to the committee to make any comment if they wish. Councillor Love.
Sorry, I was trying not to be first. I'm always. I just want to say that actually, you know, scams are becoming more and more prevalent, and that this is an important paper, which can be adapted and amended as we move forward in the future, depending on what happens with the way that scams and other agencies and people support or not. I think it's an important thing to say that you know, there is no doubt about it. I've had at least 2 scam telephone calls today from overseas numbers, whether it's about my computer or other things, but the scams are becoming more and more technical, and more clever. And so this document really does matter. I guess the proof is in how it is enacted in the wider community. And so that's something that I would be asking, that perhaps we have a report brought back to us at a later stage, perhaps in a year from now, about how this is impacting and what the outcomes are. It would be good to see some data illuminated around how many scams we think are happening, what type of scams are prevalent, and who is being targeted on the island. And don't want to give tons and tons of work to the officers, but I think that that's, you know, the proof of any policy is the outcome. I don't know if I could put that forward as a recommendation that we have a report later, but we'll just, those are my comments about this document.
Yeah, I mean, my immediate thought is I wonder whether that's data we can easily receive from the police in some way. Yeah. Councillor Cook.
Okay, so we've had some direct experience of this at Ryde Town Council. And I'd be surprised if other councils haven't also been targeted with a specific attack known as where an email has been spoofed, which means that somebody is impersonating somebody, like in our case, impersonated the mayor, and emailed all other members asking for them to do them a favour. And then for a process of social engineering, they made that member thought that the matter was urgent, and they were successful in their scam. Now, I think that obviously town and parish councils can help get the word out, but I think that also as councils we should lead by example and making sure that our systems are as secure as they can be, and use the tools available to us. For example, at the National Cyber Security Centre, which can do things like check your systems for their security robustness, which I did prior to this meeting. You can put in a domain such as the iow.gov.uk, and it would check the security of your email system. And I'm sad to report that unfortunately the Isle of Wight Council is exposed in that it is quite easier than it should be for somebody to impersonate the Isle of Wight Council, because there isn't a digital signing policy that's been fully implemented. So I think as well as general information, it would be good if there could be a certain level of technical information given to businesses and councils and other organisations on how they can secure their emails to reduce the risk of impersonation, and also give case studies on how clever these people are in targeting such organisations, to make more people aware and do simple but necessary checks to inspect that the email address that they've received is legitimate, because in some cases they can do simple things like register a domain that's very similar, So at first glance, it looks like it's legitimate, but with a little bit of extra security on the back end, you can make your email system more secure so that an email program will flag up that this is a suspicious email because the digital signing fails. So I'm sorry to get a bit technical because it's you probably gathered this is kind of my thing, but I think as well as getting out the obvious stuff out there, I think it wouldn't hurt to point people towards the National Cyber Security's guidance, and also for organisations to be a bit more proactive in securing their system.
Thank you very much. The Cabinet Member, Councillor Lucioni.
I can get Simon some more answers on this, but I do know that we're very good on this. We have a system in place that spots all of this stuff going on and blocks it all. But if I could get your statement, I'll take, because I'm actually, ICT is part of my portfolio as well, so we can look at that. But in my opinion, actually, it's really, really good, obviously, for us to have this in place. But in general population, it's about education for people to spot the signs is the most important thing. So which I lined on to ICT. What was that the next question? Was there any other questions so far that I needed to answer?
Didn't identify any questions, but we'll carry on and put your hand up if you want to come in. I see Councillor Rowland, sorry, Mr. Rowland, and then Councillor Downer.
No, let Mr. Rowland go first, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Downer. I'd like to introduce you to James Potter, who's our Trading Standards Manager, who was the author of this report. And James is available to take any questions on this particular item if you chose to raise them.
I know what it was. We were all talking about the different kinds of local. You wanted to know the local stuff that was going on. James is a font of knowledge of what actually happens on the island, so he can give you some examples which are in the report.
I just bring in Councillor Downer.
Oh, thank you, Chairman. Yes, I was just going to say about education, that is imperative because a lot of people, a lot of vulnerable people are exposed to scams, and you hear stuff like, you know, people are purporting to be the police or their bank. I think, you know, that it's the education should be done online to teach people about online as well, but the literature put out to residents should be in hard copy form, because some people are not on the internet, and you know, people would actually read something then to educate them in such a way. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I think I think the report's a very good one. It's not a criticism of the report, it's really a reflection on scams. I imagine those who are likely to be the most vulnerable are possibly older people, and with particular regard to our own age profile on the island. And they're possibly the people who are harder to reach with useful information on how to be vigilant and how to spot scams. Very often we see solutions, not just with this, with other things, is, you know, online help. Well, not everyone's online, and particularly those who are vulnerable to scams, I would imagine. And in fact, those scams often come about when someone's venturing onto the internet or email and they're not very confident with it, and that's when they get scammed. So it's about how we get this sort of public information out to the people who need to hear it most. And I think that's a real challenge. Councillor Lucioni.
I've got some stuff I want to implement, so maybe I'll go through that in a bit, but I don't know if you want to go back to the kind of scams, because it's actually not all online, although that's a big part of it. There's lots of other stuff that's going on as well.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors. As I've been introduced, I'm James Potter, the Trading Standards Manager. Hopefully the report was useful to give you a bit of an insight of this constantly evolving problem that we're facing, which are primarily targeting our vulnerable population on the island. And it's not just consumers, it's businesses that are being targeted as well. Maybe not on the same scale, but they're certainly being targeted through publishing scams, and through one of the other scams I highlighted in the report as well, about fake adverts, primarily for plant machinery as an example. They're setting up these fake adverts. They're coming to the island after paying a deposit, or in some cases paying all of the money, to turn up that the plant machinery doesn't even exist, and they've spent between £8,000 and £10,000 as an example. To answer some of the questions, figures are available. I've quoted some of our figures in the report. So in 22 and 23, we were able to save local residents over £200,000 through our interventions of talking to scam victims when they've been reported to us, intervening at an early stage, putting preventative measures in, for example, call blockers into their properties to stop those scam phone calls from coming in. Those call blockers are available through the National Trading Standards Scams team, which I've highlighted in the report. Plus, we also have our own stock of call blockers locally that we actually lend out to consumers' homes to encourage them and their families to put a call blocker in. And the sorts of figures we're looking at is high 90% of those calls are actually being blocked by those call blockers being put in there. One further item I'd like to highlight is about some awareness training. And again, it's in the report about highlighting the Friends Against Scams training. I know Councillor Lucioni has already completed the training, and she's gone on a step further than that to complete the Scam Marshals training as well. It's very simple, 20 minutes of your time online to complete a very simple training. Over 1 million people are now Friends Against Scams nationally, which is a fantastic figure from the NTS Scams team. And there's also a tool there for businesses as well, so we can train businesses to be savvy to scams as well. Just to put some context in about one of our biggest scam victims we've dealt with in the last 18 months, they lost £400,000 through a romance scam. And these are the sorts of colossal figures that my team are dealing with, going out to try and educate these people. And it is like an addiction. Once they're sucked in, to use a better term, they see it as an addiction, and they keep on and on spending money. And in our figures that we calculate, there's then a knock-on for social care costs as well. So if these residents are spending lots of their savings on losing their money to scam victims, they then fall under the threshold that the authority will then have to fund their social care as well. So it's a knock-on effect, and it's very, very wide. We do provide hard copies of our scams literature to let people know what scams are in circulation, because they're constantly changing and evolving. We go out to community groups when we're requested, WI groups, for example, other community groups. When we're requested, an officer goes out and does talks to them to educate, sign them up to the Friends Against Scams training. We've recruited scam marshals. You may have heard about our Isle of Wight Against Scams partnership, IWASP, which started many years ago. We have over 42 partners on that partnership now to work with us to help us spread those messages, because we can't do it on our own in trading standards. We're also looking at a new system, hopefully with IT, for people that want to sign up to us to receive scam alerts, for them to be notified straight away through an email or through a text system. That's something that we're going to be looking at with IT, because as soon as we get new scams, we are putting that out through our media team and letting people know as soon as possible. But we're conscious we're not necessarily targeting everybody that we need to get to. So hopefully that gives you some context. But it's quite a wide report, scams and fraud. The other side of it, fraud, you'll see in the report that we're investigating many fraud-based type offences in trading standards at the moment. Lots of criminal offences. You've probably seen one of the biggest cases that the council's ever taken earlier this year, the Resin Drive case, Angel Coatings. A fantastic result that the team put together. The director was sentenced to 3 years, disqualified as a company director for 6 years, and that's actually attracted national attention as well. And the BBC have made a programme on that, and we were filmed over a couple of days in the summer for a programme called Defenders UK, which is going to be aired either later this year or early next.
Thank you very much for all of that. And as I say, I think the report is very helpful, and you've given me an idea as a ward councillor. Maybe I should be organising a scam awareness meeting in my ward where people can come and hear all the things that you and your colleagues might have to advise them. I've got lots of hands. I'm going to start with Councillor Lever.
Thank you, Chair. sorry if I've missed it in the report. Do we work with schools or high schools?
We spoke about it today, and so we're going to start with the new cabinet members getting into high schools, so much more education around online, etc. So yeah, I've got that as one of my actions.
Councillor Love have his hand up. Yeah.
Thank you for all the work that you're doing, because actually what I do is when I receive the IWASP reports, I don't do it with all of them because otherwise you would oversaturate the market, but I do circulate those in my community because they're really important. I think there's a couple of things there that's really important. The one that, sorry, we would start having a big debate about this if we're not careful. But I mean, rented properties, particularly for Isle of Wight people, was a really quite important one, where people were offering online to pay a deposit now, and you can be the first person to rent my property because properties are such a premium. I think that's these are targeted at our most vulnerable community. But what I would be saying is encouraging everybody, particularly the press, within, you know, perhaps there could be, making some suggestions now, could be a standing column which is there every week, which says, this is the scam of the week. Perhaps that's not the right wording for that, but do you know to
We don't give anyone ideas, Councillor
yeah,
Love.
but I think it's really important that we lead as a council, and I'm very grateful for the reports that have been coming out on scams, because there are many and getting cleverer and cleverer, and we need to do all that we can to protect our community. So thank you for all of your team's work.
Councillor Jarman behind.
Oh, it is on now. Let me echo Councillor Love's commendation and thank you for your efforts. One thing I would do is I had a look on our new site, the ModGov site, and search for trading standards, and it doesn't come up on there yet. So I guess our trading standards hasn't been moved across from the old site yet. I also searched for active scams, and they don't come up on the search either on our new site. They do come up on the old site, which is useful to people, but the last update on there is from way back in 22. And I wondered if we could make efforts to keep that up to date, please, and make sure that it can be found with the search on the new site when it's available.
Councillor Redrup.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for summarising that for us as well. And I really appreciate that you mentioned that businesses can be victims of this as well, particularly small businesses that might not have the experience or the time to really think about what's happening. And I was just wondering what ways that you connect with small businesses on the island to engage them in that conversation. And if there's any support for them, particularly when it comes to social media things like running competitions, and then you get scams through that. Been a victim of that myself. Thank you.
One of the methods that we can use to speak to small businesses is our trader approval scheme. So we have over 100 traders on the trader approval scheme that they apply to join our scheme, and then we go out, or they come to us and we audit them. So we check all their paperwork. If they need DBS checks, we DBS check them as well, Experian credit reports, and then we put them onto our trader approval website that we can actually recommend to local residents. So we have that network there. We're then able to recommend and speak to those businesses as well directly when there's a scam in circulation affecting them, as well as legislation updates and so on.
Sorry, Councillor Redrup, you were asking about what support you can have to spot. So instead of friends of scams, you can do business against scams, and you can do the training online. But
That's
also
right.
you can phone trading standards and still get support as well.
Yeah, so within the report, there's a link in there for businesses against scams for some free training as well. So you can look at that.
Sorry, I think what I meant was communication wise, like how you're reaching out to businesses to tell them about these things. Do you connect with the business associations and go and give presentations at their meetings perhaps?
we haven't done for a while, but that's something that I'd really like to start again with the business associations. We used to years ago to they held events called businesses at breakfast or breakfast meetings. We used to go there and give advice about scams and also the trader approval scheme as well. That's something I'd like to look at again.
Fine. Are there any more comments, questions? Councillor Lever.
Thank you, Chair. Just quickly, and more out of curiosity than anything, are there times in the year or events that peak our yeah,
COVID had a massive impact, didn't it?
COVID had a big impact. There was variations of scams we were seeing through COVID with test and trace scams, vaccination scams. There's an example in the report of Wilco closing, and there's a variation of a scam there, pretending that the company were Wilco and using that. So latest news issues that are circulating, they'll go on the back of that and then reinvent a new scam. And we're trying to keep ahead of the curve on that. Just picking up a couple of other questions, if that's right, which I can give answers to. I'll look at the website about that being found, and also the update on that. We are looking at updating our trading standards website with new legislation at the moment anyway, so it's due for a review. In relation to talking to young adults and children, Councillor Lucioni mentioned about high schools. We've also been going out to some scout groups as well, to talk to them, because we're conscious that if we go and talk to scam victims, they're not necessarily going to listen to somebody that's official, more likely to listen to a grandchild perhaps. So we're trying that aspect as well. Scams online, we do have powers through our National Trading Standards e-crime team. So if there's a scams website there that's been reported to us, we can then request, and we have the powers to take that website down as well to get it taken offline. Problem is they'll obviously start another one, but if we can disrupt as much as we can, then we will do. And just picking up a point about the county press column and regular alerts that are in there, one of my colleagues already does a regular column in the county press on current scams and circulation, so that's already in place.
Thank you. Councillor Redrop.
Sorry, to bring it back to talking about businesses again. I've just seen that the application fee is £120 and then there's an annual membership fee as well. How many traders do you have on the trader approval scheme? And do you find that perhaps the application fee and the membership fee might prevent people from joining?
Currently, we have just over 100. I don't know the exact figure off the top of my head, but it's just over 100 traders that are on the scheme. Those fees have been the same for a while. The application fee is designed to take into account the checks the costs that we incur through doing the checks to put them online, like an Experian check and so on, and officer time to process that application through as well. In our experience, we haven't found that membership fee is prohibitive at all. From the feedback that we've heard from businesses, they find that a reasonable charge to then be able to display a logo saying trading standards approved on their vehicles, company paperwork, adverts and so on, in my experience.
So no other comments? Well, there is another comment. Councillor Lucioni.
Just before this meeting, I spoke to media because we want to obviously get it back out there. So they have done something today on IWASP, so with online stuff. So for example, I run a page so about scams, people offering to sell things. I know it's brought up before, so that's gone out today. But next week it's Consumer Awareness Week, so Citizens Advice will be doing a lot of this as well. So just want to get that out there about that. Maybe give you some more details. Another time that will be coming up that I think people should be aware of is Black Friday. Again, if it's too good to be true, if it's just offered to you personally, etc., just need to make sure that it's real. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your report and for coming to the meeting as well. Thank you. Which takes us to our final item, item 10, members' question time. Do we have members' questions? Of course we do. Councillor Love.
At the risk of opening up a big debate, I would like to scrutinise in a nice way, the cabinet announcement. I would like to understand how many people were approached to be members of the cabinet, cross-party, in the spirit of the last conversations that we had, where we all sat round and said how we would all work together as a group moving forward. I would like to know how that then manifested in a cabinet, which is essentially the same people, but in different jobs, except that. But what I want to understand particularly, and I'm scrutinising it in the nicest possible way, is what happened in the event of forming a cabinet. That is, my understanding is that people on all sides of the council have been offered posts and refused posts. And I think the general public have the rights to know why somebody would refuse a post and who those people are in the nicest way. I'm not trying, because we all sat round and said we would work together. And I want to understand why that has resulted in virtually no change. That's what I'm trying to understand, because I've been led to believe that people have been offered posts and refused them. I'd just like to understand that. So I think that's a reasonable scrutiny question to ask.
I think it sounds like a very reasonable question. I'm not sure it's something this committee would scrutinise. Obviously, the cabinet's in the gift of the leader, but a perfectly valid question. I don't know whether the leader wants to deal with it orally or a written answer. I'm
not trying to scrutinise the leader particularly. I'm trying to scrutinise the what's happened to the partnership here.
I would just reiterate, and I'm sure the leader agrees with me, the appointment as a point of procedure, the appointment of a cabinet is up to the leader. Yeah.
Not the bit that I'm scrutinising. The bit I'm scrutinising is that we all sat round in a full council meeting and said we would reach out across the council to form a more cohesive people's, or at least that was what my understanding was, cabinet, and we haven't got that. And so what I want to understand is why, if people have been offered posts, why haven't they taken those posts, and why haven't those groups taken those posts? Because this is not about groups, this is about our island people. That's so.
Council leader.
Thanks, Carl. Thank you, Chair. I'm really happy in the spirit of that openness to be able to help you on this, Chair, Committee and Councillor Love. I spoke with, to be very precise, I spoke with the leader of the Conservative group, Councillor Ellis, prior to making any decision, and subsequently after making the decision. I was informed that the Conservative group could not take a cabinet role if offered. The explanation I was given was that it would require 100% of the Conservative group in County Hall to agree. And in addition to that, it would need the agreement of the local Conservative Association and the ratification from there. The leader of the Conservative group advised me that she felt that would be impossible to deliver, and therefore they would not accept, they being Conservative group members, would not accept a cabinet role if offered. I think it's on record that the public record that the Lib Dem group do not want a cabinet role at this moment in time, and have said so publicly. I've spoken to two of the independents, one Labour, sorry, I've spoken to two other councillors, one independent Labour and one Labour, both of whom do not want to sit in a cabinet role. I have spoken with Councillor Jarman from the EI group, although that was after I made my decision with the information that I had. I made it clear that I could not consider a member of EI in the cabinet because I had previously publicly explained my disquiet at an arrangement that the Conservative group had with the EI group, which involved cabinet roles for the EI group, or certainly one member, and that I could not now, therefore, follow the same pattern, because in my view, a Conservative group and an EI arrangement was exactly the same as an alliance and an EI group, something, a group arrangement. And I publicly criticised that arrangement on the basis that it did not represent cross-chamber working. So that was my decision, Chair. I believe, in all honesty and openness, I have spoken to every group, a group leader, and that's the information I have. I would just add that on Thursday there is a group leaders meeting, and at that group leaders meeting I'm proposing a cross-chamber working arrangement with cabinet support teams. That will be on Thursday, and if that's agreed, that will be put into place. I'll give the group leaders the details of that on Thursday. That's an invitation to join with the cabinet member on 4 portfolios, to work with the cabinet member, not scrutiny, absolutely not scrutiny. There's enough scrutiny committees in the council, but to work on policy, and people will be invited to join. So that's where we are, Chair, in the spirit of openness and trying to open up and work across this chamber. That's where we are, Chair. I hope that's helpful to you.
Thank you. Councillor Love.
Can I have a supplement? Thank you. How disappointed I am at groups being offered positions or spoken to, and then because of the political alliance to those groups, not taking on roles where there are people who within those groups could amicably do make a great contribution to the people of this island. I'm disappointed at the Liberal group, if I'm really honest, because it seems to me that they want to sit on the fence, pluck away, hold the responsibility of power, but not take any responsibility when there are people in your group who could really make a difference. And I'm disappointed at that element particularly. I know that won't help me in any way, because I'm now enemy number 1 because I've said it, but I'm really disappointed that we had a really positive discussion in council, and because of allegiances to particular groups, I can understand somebody saying I'm not in a personal position at the moment to do it because of X, Y, and Z, but to say we can't do it because of our groups, I think that that's unacceptable to the people of the island. That's my comment made. I know you're going to respond, but I'm really disappointed. You could have made a really big difference, and for your own reasons, you're happy to be voted. You want everybody to vote for you, but you don't want responsibility. And we have to take responsibility, good and bad, no matter what. Sorry, I know what saying.
Yeah, I'll just quickly comment. Just to say, obviously, Councillor Jordan quoted a conversation with him and Councillor Ellis. I'm not disagreeing with that. I wasn't part of the conversation, but just to put it straight, that was Councillor Jordan's version of that conversation. Councillor Ellis may have a different view. I simply don't know. Councillor Redrup.
I can understand why you feel that way and why you're getting that impression, but you've made an assumption that the response, particularly from my group, was because we didn't want to do it politically. But I know personally, I've only been in the role for a month. You know, it wouldn't be right for me to take a position in the cabinet.
Totally accept that.
Yeah.
Totally accept that.
So that was my decision. I didn't want to take on a role, not that I was directly offered one.
I'm sorry, I didn't really mean to cause a huge row, but I think that the public are entitled to know what's gone wrong between what was said and what's. Sorry.
Councillor Lieber.
Don't know if Councillor Redrup needed to finish a point there.
You'd have to ask the other Lib Dems what their reasonings was, but for me, that would have been that's my reason. And also, you know, I work full time. I'm getting to the grips of this role. I don't want to be accused of doing it for a political reason when I've got, you know, I've got to get used to this first. And you'd have to ask the other Lib Dems why they decided not to as well, or if they were asked directly, I don't know. I know that I personally wasn't.
Councillor Lever.
Thank you, Chair. I think although I take much of what Councillor Love's said, I think it's also worth pointing out that you don't need to be in the cabinet to have influence in the council. It helps certainly, but I know I'm part of the alliance, but I'm not in the cabinet. But I know not just myself, but members of the council that also aren't in the alliance have had perfectly successful times here working with members of the cabinet. I know Councillor Ian Stevens has mentioned previously that he works closely with Councillor Oliver and Councillor Ward from the Conservative group, looking at housing. I know if I've got an issue, as the ward councillor, I will be perfectly happy to work with whoever to get some sort of success for residents there. So I think it's just worth noting that we don't put all our money in the basket of you need to be in the cabinet to sort of influence decision making here.
Councillor Jordan.
Thank you, Chair. Very, very briefly, if it's of any comfort whatsoever, every represented group will be invited to join the cabinet support teams, everyone. Conservatives, Lib Dems, and the EI group and the Labour and Independent Labour. Just so there's some comfort that we're reaching out across the chamber. That was what I heard at full council, and that's what we're trying to do. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? No, in which case I will say thank you and bring the meeting to a close.